When Barack Obama steps onto a stage, there is always a certain charisma, a kind of presence that elevates him beyond the role of a mere politician and places him in the category of natural communicator and even entertainer, and this unique ability became overwhelmingly clear when he used it to hilariously dismantle Donald Trump on live television in a way that left not only the audience in the room laughing uncontrollably but also millions of viewers at home stunned and, in many cases, speechless, because Obama's performance that day was not just a critique, not just a sharp commentary, but a perfectly timed comedic takedown that combined the sharpness of a stand-up comic, the authority of a professor, and the calmness of a leader who knows exactly what he's doing. The scene began with Obama's trademark coolness, his calm posture and deliberate pacing, and then, with a sly smile, he began to pick apart Trump's contradictions one by one, starting with Trump's endless series of bizarre claims and inconsistent statements that had become part of the American political circus. The audience initially laughed nervously as though unsure how far Obama would go, but when he leaned fully into the mockery, imitating Trump's strange cadence, pointing out the absurdity of his Twitter rants, and mocking the contradictions in his promises, the nervous laughter transformed into full-blown roars, cheers, and applause. Obama, unlike many of Trump's critics, did not rely on anger or insult. He relied on wit, sarcasm, and timing, and this made every single jab land with devastating effect. When he talked about Trump's obsession with crowd sizes, for instance, he joked that Trump probably stares into his bathroom mirror at night counting his reflections to prove his crowds are growing, and the audience erupted because it was not just funny, it was true, and the combination of truth and humor is always the most lethal kind of comedy. Obama then pivoted smoothly to Trump's constant contradictions, quoting him in ways that highlighted how ridiculous his claims often were, and adding just the right amount of sarcasm to expose the underlying emptiness. With each carefully chosen word, Obama reminded people that power is not only about position, it is about intelligence and control, and on that stage he demonstrated that while Trump thrived on noise and chaos, Obama thrived on clarity and humor, and the difference was striking. As the laughter in the room settled, Obama leaned into his next set of lines with that perfect rhythm only he seems to command, and he turned Trump from a political figure into what felt like a walking punchline, exposing not only his statements but the very persona he had carefully built, and doing it in a way that made the entire spectacle almost cinematic, because while some politicians would simply criticize policy or list failures, Obama instead painted vivid pictures that stuck in the imagination, like when he joked that Trump's obsession with being the biggest and the best was so exaggerated that if he ever lost a game of golf, he would immediately declare it the greatest loss in golf history, a loss so huge that no one had ever lost bigger, and that even the golf course itself would admit it. The audience roared, clapped, and cheered, and you could see journalists shaking their heads in disbelief because it was both so accurate and so entertaining. Obama's skill lies in the way he combines humor with an undeniable undercurrent of truth, and he wielded that skill like a sword when he mocked Trump's constant need to compare his crowds to historic events, saying, if the moon landing had happened under Trump, he would have told us the astronauts were mainly there to applaud him, and by the way, his crowd was bigger than the moon's, and the line brought the house down with laughter. But Obama wasn't done, because beyond the jokes about crowd sizes and self-praise, he dove into Trump's infamous, very stable genius remark, a phrase that had already become the subject of endless memes, and with a grin that suggested he knew he was about to deliver a knockout, he said, usually when people insist they are geniuses, they aren't, and when someone insists repeatedly that they are stable, it usually means the chair they're sitting on is missing a leg, and the crowd exploded in laughter so loud the cameras had to cut to wide shots just to capture the reaction, with people wiping tears from their eyes. This was Obama at his sharpest, blending humor with psychological analysis, turning Trump's own words into weapons against him. Every time Obama paused for effect, the anticipation grew, and when he delivered the punch, the impact doubled. He even mimicked Trump's hand gestures and repetitive speech patterns, saying in a deliberately awkward voice, "Believe me, nobody knows roasting better than me, people are saying it, everybody's saying it," and his smirk at the end sealed the impression so perfectly that the audience burst into new waves of laughter, clapping and shouting as if they were at a comedy show rather than a political event. Social media lit up instantly. Within minutes, hashtags like #ObamaRoast and #TrumpDestroyed were trending worldwide, clips of the moment being cut, shared, and captioned across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. What made it all the more devastating for Trump was that Obama wasn't yelling, wasn't angry, wasn't even visibly emotional. He was calm, witty, and in complete control, and that composure only made the roasting sting harder. By the time Obama finished the segment, people were laughing, cheering, and even standing, while others were simply shaking their heads in disbelief at the audacity of a former president dismantling a sitting president live on air with nothing but humor and razor-sharp timing. What elevated the entire moment from simple comedy to something historic was the way Obama connected every joke to a deeper truth, because while the laughter filled the room, the underlying message cut through just as powerfully, reminding everyone that the ridiculousness of Trump's words and actions had real consequences, and Obama managed to show that truth without sounding preachy by wrapping it in humor so sharp it left the audience gasping. For instance, when he brought up Trump's famous promise that Mexico would pay for the wall, Obama paused, gave his signature grin, and said, "So far the only thing Mexico has paid for is extra guacamole at Chipotle," and the room practically collapsed with laughter. But beneath the humor the audience was reminded of the broken promise and the absurdity of the claim in the first place. This was Obama's genius. He could reduce months of complicated political debate into one devastating punchline that landed harder than any think tank report or lengthy op-ed ever could. Then, as if he were building a rhythm like a stand-up comedian, Obama shifted to Trump's obsession with international relationships, mocking the claim that he had a beautiful friendship with North Korea's dictator by remarking, "As far as I can tell, that relationship was limited to one birthday card and a nuclear threat in return," and the audience roared so hard that even the seasoned anchors sitting at the press tables were seen laughing into their hands. The brilliance was in how Obama took something deadly serious, like nuclear negotiations, and made it absurdly funny without losing the gravity of the subject, leaving people both laughing and thinking at the same time. Obama didn't stop there. He turned Trump's Twitter addiction into a full-blown comedic monologue. "Look," he said, in that measured tone, "I understand social media is important, but when it's 3 in the morning and your leader is tweeting about hamburgers instead of nuclear policy, maybe the world should be concerned," and the audience's laughter was loud, genuine, and filled with recognition because everyone had witnessed Trump's bizarre late-night rants online. Obama's delivery made the entire phenomenon ridiculous yet unforgettable. He even poked fun at Trump's hair in a way that avoided being childish but still landed hilariously, saying, "If your hair is fighting that hard against the wind, maybe you should let your policies fight just as hard," and the cleverness of the line earned applause as well as laughter because it was less about the hair and more about the emptiness of Trump's agenda. Perhaps the sharpest moment came when Obama dropped the humor for just a second, his tone lowering into something more serious, and he said, "All these jokes are funny, but here's the thing, when someone spends so much energy declaring how great they are, how stable, how genius, what they're really doing is revealing their insecurity," and for a moment the room went completely silent, because the truth landed harder than any punchline. After a pause, applause erupted, not the loud laughter of comedy but the strong, steady applause of agreement, as people realized that Obama had not only roasted Trump but had also diagnosed the psychological core of his behavior in a way that was easy to understand. This mixture of sharp wit and profound insight was what left the audience speechless, because they came for entertainment but left with clarity. The laughter and applause kept rising in waves as Obama continued, and yet what made the entire spectacle so uniquely powerful was that it wasn't just a roast, it was a demolition delivered with elegance, because instead of screaming or losing composure, he stayed calm, collected, and devastatingly witty, almost as though he had been waiting years for this precise moment. And when he spoke about Trump's infamous declaration that he knew more than the generals, Obama tilted his head, raised an eyebrow, and delivered the line with surgical precision. Usually when someone says they know more than the generals, what they mean is they once watched a war movie on cable television, and the crowd burst into uncontrollable laughter so loud it shook the room, journalists wiping tears from their eyes while anchors tried and failed to keep their composure. Obama knew his audience, and he paced himself like a veteran comedian, giving them space to laugh, to breathe, and then striking again with another perfectly timed blow. He pointed to Trump's habit of firing officials at a record pace and remarked, "At this point you might as well put a revolving door on the White House. Save time, save energy," and the audience howled because the imagery was not only funny but painfully accurate, instantly recalling the endless parade of firings and resignations during Trump's term. Then, with the timing of a master, Obama brought up Trump's habit of declaring victory even when none existed, and he said, "Donald claims victory even when he loses. If he ordered a steak well done and it came back medium rare, he'd call it the greatest steak in history, the best steak ever cooked. People are saying it, everybody's saying it," and the mimicry of Trump's tone and phrasing made the audience explode into laughter, clapping, cheering, and shouting in disbelief at just how perfectly Obama had captured the absurdity. What made it even more effective was that Obama didn't need to exaggerate far beyond reality, he simply highlighted what Trump already did, amplifying it. slightly to reveal the ridiculousness inherent in the truth itself. Cameras zoomed in on people doubled over in laughter, slapping the tables, and nodding their heads because they knew exactly what Obama meant. Social media was already ablaze, clips going viral within minutes, and hashtags like #ObamaDestroysTrump and #Speechless surged across platforms. But Obama wasn't only about punchlines, he layered his humor with subtle lessons. When he mocked Trump's fragile ego and desperate need for applause, he quipped, "If the applause isn't loud enough, he'll tweet that it was the biggest applause anyone has ever seen, bigger than the moon landing, bigger than Beyoncé, bigger than the Super Bowl halftime show," and the room erupted again, half from laughter and half from recognition of the truth, because everyone had seen Trump inflate numbers from crowd sizes to television ratings. Then came the killer moment when Obama took direct aim at Trump's "very stable genius" comment, lowering his voice just slightly, leaning into the microphone, and saying, "You know, when someone insists over and over again that they are stable, it usually means the opposite, like a chair missing a leg insisting it's perfectly balanced," and the laughter that followed was explosive, echoing across the hall as if the entire building itself was shaking. That line was repeated endlessly by reporters, commentators, and comedians for days afterward, and it instantly entered the catalog of Obama's greatest comedic political takedowns. Through it all, Obama maintained the air of someone who wasn't trying too hard. He didn't look like a man seeking revenge or pushing bitterness. He looked like a man effortlessly exposing reality with the lightest of touches, and that subtlety only made his words sting more. It was as though he turned Trump's entire presidency into a live sketch, revealing the absurd theater of it all, and by the time he was finished the audience wasn't just laughing, they were standing, applauding, and acknowledging that they had just witnessed a rare kind of moment where comedy and truth collided so perfectly that it felt like history being made in real time. By the time Obama reached the final stretch of his remarks, the atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. What had started as a typical political event had turned into something resembling a comedy festival, a live televised roast that doubled as a lecture in leadership, and as he delivered his closing punches, it became clear that this moment would be replayed, quoted, and remembered for years. Obama's mastery was not simply in making jokes but in weaving those jokes into a broader narrative about truth, competence, and the absurdity of unchecked ego, and his calm delivery made every line sting twice as hard because there was no anger, only wit sharpened by experience. He reminded the audience that Trump's behavior wasn't just bizarre but dangerous, slipping in subtle warnings between the laughter, saying things like, "If your leader is more concerned with Twitter likes than briefing books, maybe that tells you where his priorities are," and while the crowd laughed, there was also a ripple of recognition and seriousness, as though everyone understood that the comedy carried a warning. Then, with impeccable comedic timing, he returned to full mockery, joking about Trump's endless rallies, saying, "Donald treats every rally like a therapy session, except instead of solving problems he just repeats them louder, hoping the applause will fix them," and the audience cracked up again because it perfectly captured the circus-like nature of Trump's events. And then came the finale, the kind of line that makes history, the kind that gets quoted in headlines and replayed endlessly, when Obama said, with that sly half-smile that signaled he knew exactly how devastating his words were, "The truth is, leadership isn't about declaring yourself the best, the smartest, the most stable, over and over again. Leadership is about showing it, proving it, living it, and when the loudest thing about you is your own voice praising yourself, then maybe the only person you're leading is the one in the mirror." For a moment the room went silent, completely silent, the kind of silence that follows a statement so sharp, so undeniable, that everyone has to pause just to take it in, and then, almost like a wave crashing, the applause came, rolling through the hall, people standing, clapping, cheering, some still laughing but others simply nodding in awe at the precision of the takedown. On live television millions of viewers saw not just a roast but a moment of clarity, and that's why so many later described themselves as speechless, because Obama had taken Trump's bluster, his contradictions, his exaggerations, and his insecurities, and in less than an hour turned them into a comedic case study of failed leadership, all while keeping the audience entertained to the point of tears. In the days that followed, clips of the event dominated late-night shows, filled social media feeds, and sparked headlines around the world. Memes of Obama's chair with a missing leg joke spread across Twitter, TikTok users lip-synced his biggest applause line, and YouTube compilations titled "Obama hilariously destroys Trump" racked up millions of views. Commentators said it was more than comedy, it was political theater at its finest, a reminder of Obama's unmatched communication skills, and proof that humor, when wielded with intelligence, can be as devastating as any formal argument. Trump's allies were furious, dismissing it as mockery, but even many of them had to privately admit that Obama's timing and delivery were flawless. To the general public, however, the event became a cultural touchstone. The day a former president, cool as ever, used laughter to strip away the illusion of power and leave his opponent exposed. And so the legend grew, Barack Obama hilariously destroying Trump on live TV, delivering line after line with the ease of a stand-up comic and the weight of a statesman, leaving everyone, supporters, critics, journalists, viewers, speechless in the truest sense of the word, not because they had nothing to say, but because they knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable, a moment where truth and comedy fused so seamlessly that it became history in real time, a moment that will forever be replayed as an example of how words, when chosen carefully and delivered with confidence, can dismantle even the loudest voice in the room.